kicking an autistic child out of my restaurant for misbehaving? My name is Gina, and I am a 55-year-old woman living in a quiet town in upstate New York. My husband Marco and I own and run a small pizzeria on the corner of Main Street, a place that has become something of a neighborhood fixture. We opened the doors more than 20 years ago, when our youngest child was just starting kindergarten. Now all 5 of our children are grown, some with kids of their own. Our restaurant is simple, warm, and welcoming. Just a little place where families can sit down, share a pizza, and talk about their day. We have checkered tablecloths, soft lights, and a big hand-painted mural of the Italian countryside that Marco's cousin painted for us years ago. We even have a little shelf of books and crayons for kids to use while waiting for their food. Running a restaurant is not always easy, but it has always been worth it. The days are long, the kitchen is hot, and the work is constant. But this place is part of who we are. We know many of our regular customers by name. We have seen children grow up before our eyes. And even though it has never made us rich, it has given us a life full of meaning. But something has changed these past few years. Ever since the pandemic, Marco and I have noticed a new kind of attitude from some of the customers who come in. Not all, of course. Many people are still kind, patient, and polite. But there is a growing number who act as if the world owes them something. Parents who let their children run wild while they scroll on their phones. People who get angry if their food takes longer than 5 minutes. And more, customers who feel it is completely acceptable to blast music or videos from their devices in the middle of the dining room. This was never a problem before. I cannot count the number of times I have gently asked someone, "Would you mind turning that down?" Only to be met with glares, sighs, or outright rudeness. To keep things peaceful, we put up signs around the restaurant. They are polite but clear. Please do not use speakerphone or play media out loud. Use headphones or keep devices silent. We explain it to people as kindly as possible. Most understand. Some do not. And then there are the ones who take it personally. 1. Afternoon, a few weeks ago, I was wiping down the front counter when a woman walked in with her young son. She looked to be in her late 30s and wore large sunglasses pushed back on her head. The boy, around 9 or 10, had dark hair and was clutching both a tablet and a phone in his hands. They chose a table near the window and sat down. Marco handed them menus and went back to the kitchen to check on the dough. At first, everything seemed fine. I greeted them with a smile, brought over a pitcher of water, and told them to let us know when they were ready to order. The woman smiled, politely. The boy did not look up. But then the noise started. The boy turned on his tablet and began watching a cartoon at full volume. Bright voices echoed across the room, high-pitched, silly sounds meant for children. At the same time, his other hand was scrolling through short videos on his phone. Every few seconds, there was a loud clip of music, a laugh, or some other noise blasting out from the second device. It filled the air like static, sharp and constant. I looked around and saw other customers shifting in their seats. A couple at the next table whispered to each other and frowned. A group of older folks, who often came in after church, looked uncomfortable. I walked over and said softly, "Excuse me, ma'am. We ask that devices not be used on speaker in the dining area. Would you mind turning the volume off or using headphones?" The woman looked up from her menu. Her face changed. "My son has both ADHD and autism," she said sharply. "He needs this to sit still." I nodded gently. "I understand. But could he use headphones instead?" "It is just that the noise is disturbing other guests." She sighed loudly. "He does not like headphones. They bother him." I tried again, kindly but firmly. "Then maybe we could put the volume on silent?" She looked at me like I had just asked her to climb a mountain. "You do not understand. This helps him stay calm." "I do understand," I said. "But we also need to make sure everyone here is comfortable. The volume is a bit too loud." She did not respond. She just looked away and went back to her menu. I took a deep breath, smiled, and walked back toward the kitchen. Marco was kneading dough at the counter. She is not happy, I told him. Are they ordering? He asked. Not yet. We let it go for the moment. A few minutes later, their food was ready. I brought out the pizza and gently reminded her. Again, please keep the volume low. It is our policy. She did not answer. I was back in the kitchen when I heard it. Loud banging like fists pounding a table. I rushed out. The boy was striking the tabletop again and again with both hands. His face was red, his eyes wide, his mouth open in a soundless scream. Plates were shaking. A glass of water had spilled and was dripping onto the floor. His mother just sat there, staring into space, as if none of it was happening. I went over to her and said, "Can you please help him calm down?" She shrugged. He is on the spectrum. This is normal behavior when he does not have his device. I blinked in disbelief. Then the boy stood up, knocking over his chair. He ran across the room, punching and kicking at empty tables and chairs as he went. He knocked over the napkin stand near the soda fountain. A child at another table cried out and clung to her mother. And the woman just sat there, unmoving. Control. "Your kid or I will!" shouted another customer. A man in his 60s stood up, clearly upset. His wife pulled him back down. That was when the mother snapped. She stood and raised her voice in a speech that sounded like something she had prepared in advance. Autistic children deserve to occupy the same spaces as everyone else. They have rights, too. You cannot expect them to act like other kids. Listened calmly. Then I said, I understand your point, but everyone still needs to behave appropriately. This is not safe. She glared at me. If you cannot help him calm down, I am going to have to ask you to leave. I said gently. She exploded. This is illegal. You are discriminating against my son. Marco stepped out from the kitchen holding a pizza box. He quietly packed up their food, walked over to her, and said in a firm voice, "Take this. Get out right now." She froze, stunned. Kids should not be expected to just sit quietly, she cried. The world needs to be more accepting of those who are different. Marco did not argue. He opened the door and stood aside. Slowly, she took the box and left, her son following behind, dragging his foot and knocking over a chair as he went. The restaurant fell quiet again. After the door closed behind the woman and her son, the dining room remained still. People looked at one another, unsure of what to say. The usual clinking of silverware and low hum of conversation were gone. I stood near the register, trying to settle my breathing. My hands were still a little shaky, though I tried not to show it. Marco put the pizza box back on the counter and rubbed his forehead with the back of his hand. That was something, he muttered under his breath. Nodded. Yes, it was. One of the regulars, Mrs. Dugan, who always came in for a small garden salad and a cup of tea, came up to the counter. She was in her 70s and always wore bright pink lipstick. You did the right thing, dear, she said gently, placing a wrinkled hand over mine. No one should have to eat lunch in a place that feels like a playground. Thank you, I said. I did not want to be harsh, but it was too much. She nodded slowly. There is nothing wrong with making rules. It is your business, your space. After she returned to her table, I quietly moved through the dining area, checking on the other customers. Most were calm by now. A few were still visibly upset. One young couple with their own toddler looked shaken. I am so sorry about what happened, I said, kneeling a little to speak at their eye level. Their daughter was coloring a picture of a puppy and looked up at me with curious eyes. The mother nodded. Thank you, that was really stressful, but you handled it the best you could. We finished the lunch shift and cleaned up as usual. Once the tables were cleared and dishes washed, Marco and I sat together in the back, sipping tea and taking a moment to rest. The afternoon sun filtered through the window, casting soft golden light on the counter. I hate doing that, I said quietly. It always feels bad. Marco looked at me over his cup. You were not rude? You asked nicely. You gave her options. But she did not want to work with you. I know, I said. But I keep thinking about that boy. He looked so angry, so out of control, and she just let it happen. Marco leaned back. You remember how things were with Joey? I nodded. Our youngest son, Joey, had struggled in school growing up. He had speech delays, trouble sitting still, and found it hard to make friends. We had taken him to doctors and specialists, worked with teachers, and tried every strategy we could find. It was not easy. But we never stopped trying. We made mistakes, Marco continued, but we did not give up on helping him learn how to be around others. We set rules. We made sure he knew what was okay and what was not. And we always stayed with him, I added. We never just let him go wild in public and called it normal. Marco gave a small smile. Exactly. We did not speak badly about the woman or her son. We had no reason to. We did not know their full story, but we also knew that every parent had a choice in how to guide their child. Every child deserves understanding, but understanding does not mean ignoring behavior that hurts others. That night, I could not sleep. I lay in bed thinking about what had happened. I thought about the woman's words, how she had said that the world needed to be more accepting. And I agreed with that, truly. The world should be kinder, gentler, more patient. But acceptance does not mean chaos. It does not mean that any behavior, no matter how loud or destructive, is okay, just because someone has a diagnosis. I had seen too many parents use those words as a shield, not to protect their children, but to protect themselves from having to do the hard work. Still, the thought of that boy's face stayed in my mind. Not just his anger, but his confusion. He had looked like he was searching for a reaction from his mother, like he wanted her to say something, anything. But she just sat there. Maybe she was tired. Maybe she had done everything she could and had simply given up. I did not know. But I could not stop thinking about how helpless he seemed, even in his rage. The next morning, I decided to post about what had happened. I wrote everything honestly, just like it had happened, and shared it online. I did not name names or give out details. I simply shared my experience and how I felt, and the responses came quickly. Some people thanked me for speaking out. Others shared similar stories from their own businesses or family outings. A few said they had felt the same way, but were too afraid to say anything for fear of being called cruel or insensitive. Many parents, even those with children on the spectrum, said that rules and structure were important, and that no diagnosis should be an excuse for harmful behavior. But not everyone agreed. There were a few angry comments. Some people accused me of being discriminatory or ableist. One message simply said, "You do not get it. You are lucky you do not have a child like mine." I read every message, even the harsh ones. I did not respond to all of them, but I read them. I wanted to understand. That afternoon, a woman came into the restaurant with a young boy, about the same age as the one from the day before. He had a small backpack and wore bright red shoes. She walked up to the counter and looked me straight in the eye. "I read your post," she said. I did not know what to expect. Was she angry? Upset? "I just wanted to say thank you," she said softly. "My son is also autistic, and I do everything I can to help him behave when we are out. But it is really hard. Your story helped me feel less alone." She smiled and placed her order. Her son sat quietly, flipping through a picture book. He looked up at me and gave a tiny wave. I smiled back. When they left, she gave me a kind nod. "You are not a bad person for having rules," she said. "You are a good person for caring about all the people in your space." After she left, I stood behind the counter for a long time, thinking, maybe there was no perfect answer. Maybe every situation was different, and every family was fighting battles no one else could see. But I also knew this. Kindness does not mean letting others get hurt. Understanding does not mean staying silent when something is wrong. I believed in creating a place where everyone could feel welcome. But I also believed in making sure it stayed safe, peaceful and respectful for everyone. And I still do. The days moved on as they always do. Our little pizzeria continued to welcome families, regulars, travelers passing through, and students from the nearby college looking for a slice after class. The incident with the mother and her son faded into the background, but the feelings it brought up remained fresh in my heart. I had not told our children about what happened, but one evening, during our weekly Sunday dinner, our daughter Sarah brought it up. "Mom," she said, looking at me across the table, "I saw your post online, the one about the boy in the restaurant." The room fell quiet for a moment. Joey, now 23, sat next to her, pushing a green bean around his plate with his fork. Sarah continued, "It made me think about Joey's younger years, about how hard it was sometimes, but also how different it was from what you described." Marco and I glanced at each other. Joey looked up. "Yeah, I remember some things. I remember not liking loud places, and I hated when people talked too fast. It was like my brain could not keep up." He paused and gave a small laugh. "And I remember when Dad used to carry those little picture cards in his wallet so I could point to what I needed without talking." Marco smiled at the memory. "That was before you got comfortable using your words. I still have a few of those cards, actually." There was warmth in the room. We had faced so many challenges as a family, but we had faced them together. "I used to get mad too," Joey said. "I remember once at a grocery store, I cried because the lights were too bright. You told me we could take a break and try again later. You never yelled at me, but you never let me break things either." I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "Because I knew you were trying, and because it was my job to help you learn how to be okay in the world." Joey nodded. That mom in the story. She was not helping him. She was just letting it happen. Sarah leaned in. "That is the thing, Mom. I think there is a difference between supporting your child and excusing everything they do. You always supported us, but you also made sure we learned how to respect others." Marco looked thoughtful. "When Joey was little, we changed our routines. We read books about autism, we made social stories, we even learned some basic sign language for a while, remember that?" Joey laughed. "I do. I used to sign more when I wanted extra pizza." The whole table chuckled. The conversation warmed, me reminding me of how far we had come as a family. That night, after everyone had gone home, I sat in the living room with a photo album. The pictures were from birthdays, school events, and vacations. In one photo, Joey was 5 years old, sitting at a picnic table with cake on his nose. His eyes were bright and his smile was wide. It had not always been easy. There had been meltdowns, tears, and sleepless nights. But there had also been small victories. The first time Joey made a friend at school, the first time he read a book out loud, the first time he rode the school bus by himself. I remembered one day, in particular, when he was about 10 years old. We had taken him to a diner, and he had gotten upset because the syrup bottle was sticky. He started to cry and wave his hands in frustration. I calmly pulled a napkin from the dispenser and wiped his hands. Then I asked the server for a clean bottle. Joey watched me closely, his breathing slowing. "See," I had said gently, "we fix problems, we do not break things." That became one of our family sayings. We fix problems. We do not break things. It was not just a rule for Joey. It was something we lived by, something we taught all our children. Challenges will come. Discomfort will happen. But how we respond is what matters most. I believed in giving every child a chance. But I also believed in teaching them how to be part of a world that includes other people. The following weekend, I was opening the restaurant when I noticed a small envelope tucked under the front door. I picked it up and saw my name written, in neat handwriting. Inside was a folded piece of paper and a child's drawing. The letter read, "Dear Pizza Lady, I am sorry for what happened the other day. My mom was really mad when we left, but later she said maybe we were too loud. I like your pizza. The drawing is of your restaurant. The tables are happy. I drew you smiling. I stared at the paper for a long time. The drawing showed stick figures sitting at tables smiling. One had curly hair like mine. The boy had drawn a big pizza in the middle of the picture, and in the corner was a smaller figure, maybe himself, waving. I read the note again and again. For all I knew, the mother had helped him write it, or maybe he had done it on his own. Either way, it touched me in a way I had not expected. I showed it to Marco. He read it quietly. Maybe there is hope, he said. There is always hope, I replied. We taped the drawing on the back wall near the kitchen, beside other notes and thank you cards we had collected over the years. Every time I walked by it, I remembered that, no matter how hard things seem, kindness and truth often leave a mark. A few days later, a young teacher from the elementary school came in for lunch. She had read the story online too. As she waited for her calzone, she said, "You know, sometimes people forget that expectations help children grow, especially kids with differences. They need structure more than anyone." I nodded. "That is what we have learned too," she smiled. "You showed a lot of grace in a hard moment. That is rare these days." I did not feel like a hero. I had only done what I thought was right. I had protected my space and all the people inside it. And I had done it without yelling or cruelty. Just clear rules, clear expectations, and calm action. Not every story ends with understanding. But this one had a small piece of peace at the end. A little boy named Danny, who remembered the kindness he was shown even after a hard day. That gave me hope. Because even though we are a pizza shop, we are also something more. We are a place where families come to feel safe. A place where children can learn how to behave in the world. A place where kindness and boundaries can live together. And that, to me, is the heart of what we do. A few weeks passed. The weather began to change, and with it came a cool breeze that hinted at autumn. The trees lining Main Street started to turn golden at the edges, and the smell of falling leaves mixed with the comforting scent of fresh pizza coming from our ovens. The incident with the boy and his mother no longer lingered heavily on my mind, but it had become a part of the story of our pizzeria, woven quietly into the memories that lived in our little restaurant. It was not the first challenge we had faced, and it certainly would not be the last. But it had reminded me of something important, something I had almost forgotten. Every person who walks through our doors is bringing their own story with them. Some carry joy. Others carry stress, confusion, or heartbreak. And sometimes those emotions pour out into our space. As someone who runs a business that invites people to gather and be themselves, I have learned to accept that. But acceptance does not mean chaos. Kindness does not mean ignoring what is right. One Wednesday afternoon, during a quiet hour between lunch and dinner, a young father came in with 2 children, a girl about 6 and a boy around 8. They sat in a booth, and I noticed the father quietly place headphones over the boy's ears. The boy was holding a small tablet, but there was no sound coming from it. The girl colored with crayons on the paper placemat, and the father helped her spell her name in block letters. The boy stayed quiet, tapping the screen gently and occasionally glancing around the restaurant. After they finished eating, the father came up to the counter to pay. He looked a little tired, but his eyes were kind. I just wanted to say, "Thanks, you," he said. It is not always easy finding places where I can bring both kids. My son has autism, and sometimes he gets overwhelmed. But this was a good visit. You make it easy with your calm space. I smiled. "Thank you for saying that. I really appreciate it. Your children are lovely." He nodded. "It takes a lot of work, but it is worth it. I do not want him to grow up thinking that the world has to change for him all the time. I want him to learn how to be part of the world too." I felt a lump rise in my throat. That was it. That was the message I had been trying to share. the idea that had been so hard to put into words. We are all different. Some of us need more help than others. But being part of a community means learning to live alongside one another, with respect, patience, and care. Later that night, Marco and I closed up the shop. We wiped the counters, swept the floors, and turned off the warm lights over each table. As we locked the front door, Marco looked across the street and said, "You know, I think we are doing okay." I smiled. I think so too. As we walked home together, arm in arm, I thought about the years we had spent building our business. The birthdays we had hosted, the nervous young couples who had come in on first dates, the kids who used to sit with coloring books and now came in with their own children. This pizzeria was more than a restaurant. It was a reflection of the values we had raised our children on. Work hard, be kind, stand firm in what is right, and make room for others, but not at the cost of peace. We had served slices of pizza, but we had also served comfort, order, and a sense of belonging, and that would not change. Yes, the world was changing. Technology, parenting styles, social norms, all of it shifted faster than we could keep up. But that did not mean we had to lose the good things: manners, community, and responsibility. The next morning, I opened the restaurant early to prepare for a school fundraiser. A local class was coming by for a pizza lunch, and we were donating half the proceeds to the school library. As I prepared the dough and spread sauce across the crusts, I heard laughter from the sidewalk. The children were arriving. Soon, the room was filled with happy chatter. The kids sat at the long tables, teachers helped serve drinks, and we passed out warm slices to hungry little hands. At one end of the room, a boy sat quietly with a small device in front of him. His teacher gently adjusted the volume on his headphones and gave him a thumbs up. He smiled back and continued watching peacefully. No one stared. No one whispered. The room was just alive with life, joyful, messy, but also respectful. I stood at the counter, watching it all, and felt tears sting my eyes. This was what I wanted. A place where everyone could belong. Where children could be children, but still learn to care about others. Where parents could feel supported, not judged, but also encouraged to teach their children how to live with kindness and structure. We're not perfect. We never would be. But we were trying, every single day. Before the children left, one of the teachers came up to me. "Thank you again for hosting us," she said warmly. "The kids love coming here. You make it feel like a second home." I placed a hand over my heart. That means so much, truly. As the last child walked out the door, holding a balloon and smiling wide, I looked around the room. The tables were a little sticky. Crayons had rolled under chairs. There were tiny crumbs everywhere. But there was also peace. Because peace is not about silence. It is not about control. It is about harmony, the kind that comes when people care about one another and try to do better. So yes, I had once asked a mother and her son to leave. Not because I disliked them, not because I did not understand, but because my restaurant is a shared space, and all people deserve to feel safe and respected there. And yes, I love children. I love families. I love the messiness of life. But love, real love, does not look the other way when behavior hurts others. Love is honest. Love teaches. Love protects everyone in the room, not just the loudest voice. That is the kind of love I believe in, and that is the kind of restaurant we will always be.